Are you ready to step back in time and uncover the rich history of Waterville, Maine? Join us once a month for an unforgettable journey through days gone by. For exact scheduling, look on watervillehistoricalsociety.org under events. During the events, you'll stroll down Main Street and immerse yourself in the iconic stores like Days Jewelers or reminisce about the early days of Thayer Hospital. Discover the roots of Colby College and other first-time discoveries that shaped our beloved city. From classic explorations to fascinating tales, there's something for everyone. Join us for social time, beverages, and light snacks starting at 1:30 p.m. And at 2 o'clock sharp, you'll be taken on an engaging journey through Waterville's past. And best of all, admission is free, and all are welcome. So check our calendars or make your way to the Reddington Museum, home of the Waterville Historical Society, at 62 Silver Street, right here in Waterville. We can't wait to go back in time with you. See you there.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And it's a beautiful afternoon, so I don't know why you people decided to come and listen to me, but we'll try to do our best. I'm looking around the room. I see some familiar faces. And we're going to take a look at the Plains. It was called back in those days. I guess it still is to some extent today. And how it got its name, how it was settled by the Canadian immigrants. And then from there, a little bit later on, we'll take a walk down Water Street from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And then some of the side streets, and even go up on the mountain, which I'm sure some of you don't even know what I'm talking about when I say the mountain. The mountain is a high ground area west of Water Street, Summer Street. Higher ground, we used to call it the mountain. So, for what all that is worth. Okay. The Plains were primarily settled by the Canadian immigrants that came into this country looking for better jobs at the textile mills and the paper mills and all of the other industry that was in the Waterville area at the time. And they initially, from what my grandfather told me, initially started to settle along the river down at the head of falls, what was called King Court at the time, right where the 2 Cent Bridge is. The community grew so large that they started to branch out, and then they resettled in the south end of the city along Water Street. And that flat area basically starts where the Hathaway building is. It goes all the way south past Grove Street down to where the Couture softball field is. I guess it's still called that. It was when I played there. So that's the area that was called the Plains, La Plaine, for those of you that speak French. And that was a French term, and it was called that because of its flat area and close to the river. So how did I end up on the Plains? It's a little bit of a convoluted story, so I'm going to give you the short version. Because my mother was born in Winslow, my grandmother was born in Waterville. My grandfather was born in Canada in 1886. He came to the United States as a fairly young man after having worked in the woods as a lumberman. Heard of the opportunities that were going on here in Waterville and all the jobs that were available. So he came here, I am not sure when, met my grandmother, and they were married in 1909. He somehow talked her to moving back to Canada, back to the lumber mill, back to the lumber camps, where she was a cook and cleaner in the lumber camps. A job that she told me she hated. While they were there, my father was born, but he was not born to them. And his mother died at 13 months after he was born. His father ran a farm, couldn't take care of the baby and the farm at the same time, so he put my father up for adoption. And the people that became my grandfather and grandmother were cousins, adopted him, so that's why the name never changed. We were still all blood related. So they adopted him because they were not able to have kids of their own. They moved back here in around 1918. And that's where they settled on Water Street. The house is no longer there. It was a 4-unit apartment house that burnt 10 or 15 years ago maybe. It was across from where the Hathaway building is now. It's a vacant lot. And my grandfather worked at the Lockwood Duchess textile mill that used to be referred to as just the woolen mill. And in about 1936, the mill started to not be financially viable. So they owned all of the duplex houses that you see pretty much in that area around the Hathaway building now. That's where the mill was, the Lockwood Duchess mill. And they also owned all of the duplex houses that you see up the hill in Winslow on Monument Street, up in that area. They owned all of those to house the transient Canadians that were coming to Waterville to work the mill. Well, the mill put all those houses up for sale. My grandfather bought one in 1936. That's where I was born and raised. That's how I ended up on the plains in the south end of the city. So now that I've bored you completely, life was a little bit different back then. I see a lot of faces here that are just as old as I am, if not maybe more. I hate to say that. So you remember those days when, we didn't have a television in our house until I was 12 years old. We didn't have a telephone until I was in high school, which was in the early 60s. And so, but we got along fine without them. A washing machine, no dryer. So all the clothes back then were hung out to be dried on the clotheslines in the summertime. In the wintertime, I don't know if this happened in your houses, but it was kind of unique in ours. My mother used to hang clotheslines all over the downstairs of the house and hang all the clothes. And it was quite a chore to walk through all those hanging clothes, getting ready to go to school in the morning. And we had no refrigerator. It was an ice box. And we had weekly ice deliveries to the house where they would drive up with a horse and buggy, and the person would have chunks of ice in the back of the wagon and would come into the house, take measurements, how big a chunk you needed that week, and then go out and he'd cut a piece of ice and bring it in and set it in. So we had no refrigeration except for the ice box and a combination wood and kerosene stove. There's the ice box on the left. There's a kerosene and wood stove on the right. And of course the ice wagon that used to come from Springbrook Ice and Fuel Company. That's how the word ice got into their name. So growing up, we all had our chores, obviously. So one of my chores as a fairly young lad, on the kerosene side of the stove was a canister. That big around, maybe about that tall. It was a little bit shorter than me. And on the porch outside, we had a 55-gallon drum full of kerosene. And one of my chores was to go out every so often and take that canister off the stove, carry it out to the porch, fill it with kerosene, bring it back in, and set it up. So that was how things were as far as the kitchen and refrigeration and your cooking went. Again, like I said, we had no television until about 1958, I think, is when we got the first television set. We were the second people on the street to get them. So there was somebody that beat my dad to it. My dad didn't want a TV either. I think it was my mother that talked him into it. She wanted to watch soap operas. She had heard about those things going on around noontime. So. I need to talk louder. Is my microphone on?
It's on for the recorder.
Oh, it's on for the record. Oh, okay. So I'll try to talk a little louder. Thank you, Pat. Yeah. So then we had to find things to do with ourselves, and we played outside. During the wintertime, my brothers and I built a skating rink in our backyard, and all the neighborhood kids used to come and enjoy it. Summer times were more activities in summertime because there was no school, so we played outdoor games. Kick the can, if some of you remember that game or not. Hide and seek. Oh, that was it. We played hide and seek all the time. To the point to where, and I know a lot of you have heard this before, you were probably told this by your parents. After supper, not dinner, after supper, dinner was at noon. After supper, you go out and play, and you don't come back till the street lights come on. So those are some of the things that we did. And then, of course, the boys, there was a Little League baseball field right there at the base of the hill. As you go down Water Street. We spent a lot of summer days playing ball there. And I was telling the story to Jessica last week, and I don't know if I should say it because there's nothing to be proud of. But the baseball field was located next to that. I don't know if people know where the Roundhouse is. It's right on the corner of Oxford Street and Kennebec Street. Well, they added a flat part to the building and opened a furniture store there, and it was all glass. And us guys, we were getting a little older and getting a little stronger. We wanted to see who was the first one that could hit a baseball over the fence and through the window of that store. I know you all think I did it. I didn't do it. No one did. Because unfortunately, right there on the sidewalk, just before you got to that part of the building, was this ginormous elm tree. And we could never get the ball through it. We'd hit it up in that tree and it would bounce around. And if we missed the tree, then somebody had to chase the ball all the way down Water Street because we only had one ball. So some of the things that we did back then to entertain ourselves. Let me see if I'm missing anything here. Oh, yeah, there's one other thing. Some of you people may remember this. Probably not. This happened in the winter time. And pretty much trying to give you a landmark where this particular place was. It was, Charlie probably remembers. It was called Gingine Hill. And it was located directly across the street from where the old Morning Sentinel building was. And right where today is a Habitat for Humanity store, well, that used to be Farrah Brown Auto Parts store. The hill was there, and it was a steep hill. And it always involved two things. In the summertime, we always wanted to see who could actually ride their bike up that hill. I only saw one person do it. It was closed off in the wintertime by the city so that the kids down in that area of the city could go sledding. And it used to always be who could go the farthest down that hill. Well, at the bottom of the hill, there was a little dip, and we had to bring a lot of kids home for repairs. Because the person that lived on the corner had a cast iron fence. It didn't move. It didn't move. So, I have.
Origin of that name?
Oh, yeah, I have a. No one knows, to my knowledge, no one knows where that name came from and how it's spelled. I have spelled it in my columns many times, but I spelled it phonetically because I had no idea how to spell it and why it was named that. But that's what it was called when I was growing up, and we used to go sledding there. And what's that?
I have an idea of how it came about. I'm not sure either.
Oh, is that right? I'd be interested in hearing it. So,
Can you repeat what you said the name of that hill was?
the name of the hill was Gingine. I spelled it J-I-N-J-I-N-E. That's the way it sounded to me. Like I say, I spelled it phonetically.
What's it called today?
It's no longer there. When they put in the Spring Street connector, they tore down all the houses that were on that hill. There was a trailer park to the left of it. That's gone. And that whole banking was filled in to be able to put that connector that connects the bridge to Silver Street where the entrance to the concourse is. That was not there before. It would be done. You follow Silver Street where Silver Street Tavern is, and then you had Cancun's restaurant, and then you have a couple of other stores. There used to be a liquor store there, the Green Front, they used to call it. And there was a Majestic restaurant. Then there was Farrah Brown, and then there was the Gingine Hill, and then there was a print shop, Brown's, I think was the name of it. Barton. Then there was a little diner, like a little coffee shop next to that. So that was a Silver Street before you got onto the main part of Silver Street. Well, all of that is gone now because they came in with that Spring Street connector, and so that whole hill was filled in, and it's gone. It's no longer there. I could probably, if you go to that area of the city, Lockwood Alley, which runs after Oxford Street, Lockwood Alley, it was right in line with it as you get to the bottom of that hill. So we used to do a lot of sledding there and stuff like that in the wintertime. But getting back to the Plains and how things were, and a lot of you obviously know this also, when the Canadians came down from Canada, they were not welcomed with open arms. Because the local people said that they were coming down here and they were going to take away jobs from the local people. So if you had a French name, you didn't get a job in the mills. So a lot of people anglicized their names. And I can give you a couple of examples. There's probably some of you here that have a family history of having had your name anglicized. L'évêque. The French word l'évêque is a bishop. So a lot of the l'évêques changed their names to bishop. You had the Rancourts, Rancourt, French name, changed to Ronco. Pelletier, changed their names to Pelkey. My own family, my mother's maiden name is Labbe, L-A-B-B-E, Labbe. Okay. All of her siblings, except for herself and one other one, there were 13 kids in her family. 11 of them changed their names to Libby. My mother didn't. She was insulted if you ever called her Libby. So they were not. That's why the Plains was settled as a community within itself. As we're going to go down Water Street in a little while, you're going to see why. Everything was on Water Street or in the side streets that you needed as a community, except for one thing. And I don't remember this ever being there. Clothing stores. I don't recall a clothing store on the Plains. So you had to go, when you got clothes, school clothes, things like that, you had to go. And there's another thing. Some people called it uptown. Some people called it downtown. Anyway, you had to cross the border. Okay, this is an excerpt I'm going to read from you from a book that was written by Reverend Edwin Whittemore in 1902. And it marked the 100th anniversary of the incorporation of the city of Waterville. As you all know, Waterville was incorporated in 1802. He wrote this book in 1902, and he calls it The History of Waterville. Here's an excerpt from it. In the early days, there was bitter feelings between the young men of the Plains and the young men of the town. The town young men did not go down to the Plains with good intent. And when the Plains men came uptown, they came in bands, strong enough for offense or defense, as the case might be. Sometimes the French warriors, he called them warriors, imported some redoubtable fighter from Bangor and Orono, etc., to retrieve a disaster or to lead their clan to victory. So this is why the community of the Plains, as it was called, came about as its own self-contained community, except for clothing. Yeah, you had to go uptown. So with that, we can probably take a little bit of a look at the South End as it looked like in the 1940s and 50s and early 60s, a period that I grew up down there. I left Waterville in 1966. I was drafted into the military service, so I was gone for 3 years. I came back in 1969, and the landscape down in the South End and the Plains had changed tremendously in the 3 years that I was gone. So we're going to take a look at it, before that, and see it. See what surprises Jessica has for me here. Oh, school. Before we get into this, there were a lot of schools back there, neighborhood schools. So people used to walk to school. In the South End, you had South End Grammar. Was it for the Protestants? That's what we were told. Because I was raised, I was raised Catholic. So. Then there was St. Francis School, St. Francis de Sales School, elementary school. That's where I went to school through the 5th grade. After the 5th grade, the nuns kicked us out, told us to go someplace else, and they kept the girls. So that was fine. That was fine. The bottom photo is a picture of a schoolhouse that was to the left of that big building that you see there, the St. Francis School. That building was to the left. It was called the Brothers School. That's where the boys went 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Separated them from the girls because they were getting older. Started to see a reason why there was a left. Anyway, I don't have to explain that part. I hope not anyway. So that's where they went. 4 or 5 years that I was at that school was vacant because they had moved all of the boys to another school on Silver Street called the Brothers of St. Joseph. The school was where the Notre Dame Church is right now, that round church, Notre Dame Church. That's where that school was. So anyways, except there was 1 year, and maybe, I know Tom Nail is here. There was 1 year when St. Joseph Maronite School was being built on Front Street that the Maronites used that building as a schoolhouse. 1 year that I remember. So there's a St. Joseph School. That picture was taken back in the 1930s, so don't look for me. But that's just to show you what St. Joseph School looked like. It had 4 classrooms, and that was it. It was taught by men, brothers, and that's where it was. And there's the South Grammar School, which is now part of the Muskie Center. That's where the Protestants went. There was also Notre Dame School, which was it's basically on Water Street, but it abuts King Street behind it. And the school was downstairs, and the church was on the 2nd floor. Now, KV Cap occupies that whole building. That's one of the playgrounds in the South End back in those days. Again, that was back in the early 40s. That apartment building behind there is no longer there. I think that burnt a couple of years ago.
My father owned that building.
You own that building?
My grandfather owned it before him.
Yeah. So that was one of the playgrounds, of many playgrounds that were in the South End. Okay, we are going to start a little journey up Water Street now. And we're going to start, this is across from the Hathaway building. Okay, I didn't put these quite in the right order. The lower right-hand corner was a Lockwood Duchess barn that was located where the KFC, the old KFC building is. When KFC bought that property, when that mill was going nonprofit, I always say the mill was going nonprofit because it was losing money, and they started selling off a lot of their properties. That was one of them, and they tore that barn obviously was torn down to make room for the KFC. Then if you go up the street a little ways after that, in the upper left-hand corner is Rodrigues Market. That was the first one of no fewer than 10 of those mom and pop markets within a half mile of each other. There were a lot of them. You're going to see a lot of them as we go. Rodrigues Market, that's the one that we used to go to a lot. I mean, they had everything there. They had penny candy, they had a meat counter, they had bread and pretty much anything that you would need. The photo to the right was to the left of Rodrigues Market. Anybody remember Malroy's Tavern? Why? Why do you remember it? No, never mind.
My father used to go there.
Mine too. And I used to go with him once in a while, and I would have an orange soda.
Bag of chips and the soda, keep me in the car, and he used to go in and then the tap dance.
I guess I must have missed that one. Yeah, so that was Malroy's Tavern. And then just a little ways from there, there was an apartment building and then another store, Pete's Market. Why it was called Pete's Market, we don't know, because the person that owned it, his name was Bob Cody.
So that's adjacent in front of the old church?
No,
No?
Pete's Market, it's an empty lot right now. Roderick's Market, where Roderick's Market was, is approximately where Sunrise Bagel is now. Pete's Market was, you had a driveway, then you had Ma Roy's, then you had an apartment house, and then there was Pete's Market. So within a very short distance, you had those two markets. And then the upper right-hand corner, that was a warehouse that belonged to Lockwood Duchess. That was across the street on Water Street. It's on the east side of Water. That's where the big parking lot is now. The parking lot never used to be as large as it is. That only was enlarged after Hathaway moved into that building. And they tore down that warehouse. But that was right along the street there. The lower left-hand corner was a gas station.
Amoco.
Amoco? Yeah, no longer there. Lower right was a little building, no larger than the size of an outhouse. Maybe a two-seater outhouse. Where if somebody ordered a pizza, you went in and you ordered a pizza and somebody else came wanted to order, you had to get out so they could come in. Very small place, but that's where Scotty's Pizza started before they moved across the street. That's the corner of Sherwin. That was a Water Street Market. It was owned by a man, his last name, I don't remember his first name, his last name was Lainteau. I don't know how to spell it. It's French. French. We used to refer to it as the Lainteau's Market. Just to the right of it, I don't know if you can see, a little bit taller building. Yeah, that's the Shapery. What was it called back then, do you know?
Moulin Rouge.
It's called something else, too.
Who you're talking to?
It was called the Belvedere. It was the Belvedere. My father and mother used to say, we're going to the Belvedere tonight, behave yourselves. So yeah, that's right on, this building here is no longer, that's a parking lot now. Okay, upper right-hand corner, it was the main theater. It was a theater that used to be called the French Theater. Lower left corner, Davio's Pharmacy. Sat on the corner of Water Street and Gray Street. The lower right, Bilodeau's Esso gas station is on the corner of Gold Street. It's part of KV Cap now, but it was a gas station there. Repair shop. And then you had, yeah, we're going to get to that in a minute. And there was another market there called H.A. Marshall's. It was a First National store. But it wasn't there very long, from what I remember. It wasn't long there, but it's longer because when I remember the South, there was only one real, genuine grocery market, and that was Laverdia's, and that was on the corner of Grove. I don't have a photo. Yeah. Yeah, it's a vacant lot now. It's not there anymore, so I don't have a photo of it.
I threw that one in there for you.
That's a surprise. I have no.
Because you said you didn't know why it was called Roderick, so I found the connection with Toulouse.
Oh, is that inside Roderick's? It looks familiar.
Yes.
It looks familiar.
Yes.
Again, I don't know why it was called Roderick's store because the Toulouses owned it.
Oh, no, but the Toulouses, the Rodericks married a Toulouse.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
I never knew why. I always questioned it. Why is it called Roderick's? Because I knew Don and I knew his brother and his parents because we used to go there a lot. Okay, now we're going down Water Street back then. You see a lot of those we'll see more of these in a minute. You're starting to see the row of it. The four.
White fence is still there.
The 4 stories apartment house on the left. Yeah, that picket fence is still there, and that's where advanced cleaning is. Right after that was another market. I don't remember the name of that market. But you can see the marquee from the main theater right about smack in the middle of that photo. And now you're looking north, and there's the Bilodeau's Esso station. And if I'm not mistaken, that first building right here, was that South End Cafe? I think so.
More this way.
More this way?
This way. That's a little market.
Well,
Cody's Market.
Oh.
Cody's Market. That's why I said, because there was another Cody's Market that you showed earlier.
yeah.
But that's the Cody's Market I remember.
Oh, so that was called Cody's too? Okay. Because I remember right next to the South End Cafe was a barber, Dave Giroux. That's where I used to go get my hair. My dad. My dad, yeah, 25 cents. 25 cents every other week. I had to walk from the Brothers School on Silver Street to there to get my hair cut and back on the lunch hour while I was in school.
So a story I heard from Reliable Franco's was that there was a barber shop, but if you were maybe a preferred customer, you could go out back.
I never.
But there's
I was probably 11 years old, so the only thing I remember about Gabe, he was very, very, very much involved in politics in the city of Waterville. And
Barber shop too, up there, on the corner of Golden. There was another barber shop there.
on top of the hill. Yeah, I'm not there yet. So anyways, he was very involved in the politics of Waterville. And back before the city council form of government, they were known as aldermen. And he is the only Republican alderman or council member that has ever been elected out of the South End Ward 7. I can't remember anybody else. He was the only Republican that I can ever remember being on the Board of Aldermen. And if you didn't mind listening to his politics, he'd talk your ear off. But again, I was 11 years old. I had to get back to school. I really didn't care. Okay, now we start to look at that row of houses that lined the east side of Water Street that is now nothing but a guardrail and badly overgrown. All those buildings were 4 stories. All those of you that remember. There was one level at street level, 2 above, and 1 below, right on the bank of the river. And another thing that you're going to notice, all the buildings that I've showed you so far, all the little markets, the Che, and all of that, all had apartments above. And here you had all of these tenement buildings with 4 units, or 4 stories, 4 levels. How many apartments are in there? I don't recall, but I think I remember there were some had 8, which brought me into 2024, saying, I don't think there was a housing shortage back then. There was plenty of places to live. And those are the same houses from photographs. Those are further down the street. Photographs are probably taken a little bit earlier in time. But as you see, they're all different, but yet they're all the same. Because, like I touched on earlier, and I said that we would talk later about it, is the Plains, the South End of the Plains, was a self-contained community. So far, what we've seen plenty of mom-and-pop stores where you could get your provisions. There was a grocery store. There was a pharmacy. There was a supermarket. And somewhere in here, if you didn't move it on me, there's a picture of Peachy's Furniture Store, which was right there at the face of Gold Street. As you come out of Gold Street, facing water, it was right there.
Are those porches overhanging the sidewalk?
No,
Okay.
there was no sidewalk.
Was that area in the photo two frames back below the porches? Yeah. That we were.
One more?
Yeah, right there.
No, not that one. Three forward.
Go forward.
Forward. Keep going. One more. Right there. What is that on the right then? Is that just part of the building?
That is. I'm gonna rely on local historians on that one because that's not my photo. I have no idea where it is.
I put it in there and it said that it's Water Street.
To me, I think it's Temple Court.
Temple Court,
Very narrow.
but that's downtown. That's not even in the South End, is it?
Labeled as Water Street.
Water Street.
Yeah, don't kick those out. That'd be bad.
Well, there's a couple there that look pretty precarious the way they're braced up with 2x4s.
So that area is part of the building's property, not a sidewalk, is that what you believe?
I have no idea. That looks like an old picture of Water Street back in the day when a trolley went from, I think, Fairfield to Oakland.
Those awnings shown in that photograph, would they have been overhanging the sidewalk
Probably.
in the color photograph?
Yep.
So they were overhanging the front
Right, no street track.
That's a really old grainy photo, but you can see the trolley car. Right in the middle there, that's a trolley car. Okay, we're gonna, from where we have left off, I said that there were no fewer than 10 of those stores in the Plains area. That included up on the mountain, like I talked earlier. On Summer Street, there were 3 stores. Back then, there was Pomelo's Market, which pretty much located where the Silver Street entrance is now to the New Dimension Credit Union. Located right around in that area. That's where it was. Then, that other barber shop that you alluded to, right on the corner of Gold and Summer. It was most recently Ron's Variety. Okay, back then it was Larry's Variety. It was Larry Bouchard. It was a cousin of mine. And there was a little barber shop next door. But was it that? I never went there. For some reason, my dad didn't want me to go. Yeah. Okay, then further down, after you cross Gold Street, headed south again, if you're headed down Summer Street towards the cemetery, right opposite from Kimball Street was that little market. And that was my dad's. If you look real close at the sign, you'll see that it says C.P. Halley. Yeah. And he owned that store prior to World War II. And when he closed it when he went in the military, after he served it during the war, he came home, and he went to work at Hollingsworth and Whitney, which is James Scott Paper Company. And
Roland,
Kimberly.
your dad, was he a Conrad?
My dad was Conrad.
Conrad, yeah.
Did he sell gas?
He sold gas.
Is that where that post that you have?
Yeah, I still have the post from the Shell sign. Yeah. But it's torn, it's all long. I remember when I was walking to the brothers' school, when I was going there, I'd walk from our house, I'd walk past it, and it was nothing but a shell, a shack. Since then, it's been demolished, and if you come up Kimball Street, when it intersects with Summer, there's a little area to the left of there's an apartment house right in front of you. To the left, there's a little overgrown area. That's where it was. I had to show you that one. Then there was a South End Arena, which a lot of people here remember. A lot of good times down there. A lot of lies told at night. And one person on the right was Arthur Gagne. He was a police captain, and he built that rink for the kids. He wanted the kids to have some place to go. He was a very generous man, very committed to his community. But once you entered his building, whether it was the old warming shack with the tar paper siding and the sawdust floor, or the newer one that he built next to it, you were expected to toe the line. He was a no-nonsense guy. He wouldn't allow any shenanigans. On the left is his son. We used to call him Chikal. And he was like 6'2". There was nothing little about him. But the interesting part about that hockey rink right there, it was Olympic size. None of these rinks that you see today, like at Colby and that, those are not. Those are just the normal, regular size. This was an Olympic size rink.
What were the rough years that was open and had, you know, had some good quality hockey played? You remember roughly the years? Because I know I went there. My father.
Yeah, there was. Well, my dad played hockey for. He always called it the Notre Dame Club, and that's where they used to play down there. And he played back in the 20s and 30s, and that's where I went to play hockey. Was right there. That's where I went to skate. And so it's been around. Been around a long time.
They also had boxing matches there.
I was just going to say that they also had boxing matches there. But too bad after Arthur passed away, and his son tried to keep it going. But back then, he used to get a stipend from the city of $3,000 to maintain that, and then everything else came out of his own pocket. And then over the years, the city cut the funding, and that pretty much.
What was his name again?
Arthur Gagne, Gagne. Before some people anglicize it to Gagne. Or Gagne. There you go. There's public skating at the South End rink. Yeah, one of the interesting parts is once you got to high school and you'd go skating there, every so often you'd like to take your girlfriend skating, and I think it cost $0.25. Can't remember exactly how much it cost, if it was that much. Anyway, at the end of the night, because back then there was a curfew. I was going to touch on that a little bit later, but there was a curfew back in those days, 9 p.m. When the fire horn sounded at 9 p.m., everybody under the age of 16 had to go home. Had to be in the house. You got caught on the street, you were picked up by the police, and you were brought home, and then you were disciplined. So, after 9 o'clock in the evening, especially on a Friday, Saturday night, when most of us would go down there, hang out, do some public skating, and if you didn't have a girlfriend, you were hoping you'd have one by the end of the night. But you could never be guaranteed that. Anyway, if you stayed afterwards and helped them scrape the snow off the rink, grab the fire hoses, and flood the rink and get a new sheet of ice on there, you got to go public skating for free. So that was an incentive to help out. And one of the strange things is, he didn't go out and buy scrapers or anything like that. All of his scrapers were made out of old traffic cones. Most of them had speed limits, a speed limit sign. Anyways, let's just say he improvised, right? Yeah, that's it. That's it from the hill. And it had lights. It had lights. You could play hockey at night. You could public skate after dark, because we all know in the wintertime it gets dark at 3:30, 4 o'clock. So.
Roland, you could touch on what's going in there next.
Yeah, and now, it's going to be some buildings on the corner. They're going to be torn down, and there's going to be a housing development built in that area. Can't remember how many. 37 units. Yeah. Yeah. Now we're back on Water Street, and right on the corner, right across from the Baptist Church. That was a fire department substation. There were 3 of them in the city of Waterville. You had the Central Fire Station, as it is today, and then you had Hose 3, which was the south end of the South substation. You had one on Western Avenue, the Western Avenue substation, which most recently was a bakery. And then you had one on Taconic Street, and that now I think is a social club, or it was. I haven't been down there in a while. So. But there were 3 substations in Waterville besides the Central Fire Station. We all recognize that, don't we? We almost got another one. One of the things, I'm going to move off a little bit here for the time being, because I want to just, I don't know what you want to call it, but one of the strange things that have occurred in my lifetime growing up in the south end of Waterville and being involved with things that go on within the city was back in the 60s, around that time, they took out that rotary and decided to tear down the Crescent Hotel, which you see right there, and make Front Street one way north, Main Street one way south. And then further up, where Cellar T is now. Most of you probably remember it used to be Laverty's drugstore. There was some buildings. There was a building all lining up that whole area. They tore those down for parking. Okay, that was in the 1960s. Here we are 60 years later. They built a hotel where there used to be one. It went back to two-way traffic on Front Street and Main Street. And then they built buildings where they tore one down 60 years ago. So I just wanted to interject that. I was going to take a stroll up Main Street, but Jessica asked me to save that for another day to reminisce about when or what Main Street looked like back in those days. I don't remember a lot. I don't remember all of it. I remember probably 85 to 90% of it. So I'm sure those of you that come to that one might be able to help me out there too. But yeah, so we decided to wait another day because I'm already past my time. And when she asked me today to speak for 45 minutes, I said, what am I going to talk about for 45 minutes? And then after I met with her last week, I said, I don't know if I can keep it within 45 minutes. So that's pretty much what life was like, and my own personal experience of growing up in the South End, growing up on the plains. I don't remember the 1940s. I was born in 1947. But I do remember 1952 when Dwight D. Eisenhower was elected president. I remember that. I was 5 years old. I remember that because my mother and father were so disappointed because they had voted for Adlai Stevenson. So that's the first thing I start to remember right around that 1952. So that's why I don't include anything pretty much in the 40s because, like I said, yes, Ann?
Most of the shops on Water Street were located starting from Hathaway, going to past Grove Street a little bit, and then going further down was mostly houses.
Mostly houses, yeah. Yeah, most of the businesses were north of Gold Street or in that vicinity.
Wait, so my question was, you said that things changed dramatically while you were in the military. Can you explain that? What caused that change, or what were the changes?
Okay, one of the things that I heard, because I was gone, like I said, I was gone for
Years. What were the years?
I was gone from 1966 to 1969. Believe it or not, the United States military decided that they wanted me so badly that I got my draft notice in the mail the day before I graduated from high school. 2 months later, I was on a plane bound for Fort Dix, New Jersey. So, but it was in that 3-year period from 1966 to 1969 when I came home and all those apartment houses on the east side of Water were gone. They were in the process of tearing down, and I don't remember what was on the corner of Gold and Water where they have that big brick elderly housing now. That was torn down and other things rebuilt. And then Peach's store was gone, Laverty's store was gone. There was a lot of things taken down, and when I kind of questioned, because I served from 1966 to 1969. Age-wise, I was 18 to 21. So I was still fairly young. I started asking, why are they tearing all this stuff down? And I kept hearing the word blight. And
The word what?
blight.
Spike Carey was mayor then.
Spike Carey was mayor then, yeah. That's the word that I kept hearing because I knew Spike fairly well because my brother worked for him as a land surveyor. And that's the word I kept hearing. And then even in my own neighborhood where I live now, where I grew up, most of that neighborhood was demolished. And low-income housing authority came in and put up duplex units. So there was a lot of change going on as far as some areas were being totally cleaned out and nothing had been there, vacant lots. Other places were rebuilt with something else or
You came back at the tail end of urban renewal.
Yeah. Because the downtown, Charles Street That's why it was called the Charles Street Urban Renewal. Is now the Concourse. And right next to that street was Temple Court. And there was a lot of apartment houses there. Those were all torn down. That all happened while I was gone. So that's why I say when I came back, I had seen a lot of changes to the city of Waterville in that short period of time.
The houses on Water Street, were they owned by the mills or by individuals?
I don't know. The only houses that I know that were owned by the mill were down in the Kennebec Green Street area, Oxford Street, all those duplexes. And then if you go across the river, you go up the hill, Monument Street, there was a lot of duplex and multifamily. Those were all owned by the mill, by Lockwood Duchess. I'm not sure. I'm not sure who owned those houses, whether they were individually owned. I'm going to probably go out on a limb and say they were individually owned. Oh yeah, I forgot about that dry cleaner. Right next to where Scotty's Pizza is now, or was now, if that makes sense, was now. Where that parking lot is, that was Red Star Cleaner. There was a dry cleaning steam laundry. And then across the street, Reddington Street, where the VFW now was the Reddington Street Elementary School. I forgot to mention that school when I was telling you about the schools. That the VFW purchased from whoever owned it. I don't know who else owned it. But that school had been closed for quite a while.
Well, do you know who owned the Red Star?
No.
Does anybody know if there was a Chabot family that owned?
Yeah.
That was on Summer Street.
And it was a dry cleaner?
Yeah.
It was. Was it kind of near Palmer?
That's right, there was a dry cleaner there.
Liberty.
Yep, Liberty Cleaners, yep. I had forgotten about that one. See, he knows more than I do. I'll have him come up here, right? Yeah.
Over the years, as they repaved Water Street, how much of it was sort of changed or straightened out slightly from its original shape?
None. It's still the same. That's one another thing too that happened in those years when I was growing up down there. All those streets were dirt. They were all dirt streets, except for I think Water Street was paved, but a lot of the side streets. Another thing I forgot to mention on Veteran Court, right after you go by Advanced Cleaners, that white picket fence, there was a bakery there, Baldick's Bakery. Well, I used to do my paper route in the morning, and I used to smell that bread, and I go, oh wow. But my paper route didn't go up that far. So.
Was Bambi's Bakery open in Thursday?
Bambi's? It sounds familiar. I think it's the same. I think it's the same place. Yeah, they have.
Elm City Bottling Company.
That's where the park is.
You're starting to look familiar. I think we're related, aren't we? Yeah.
Don't tell anybody.
I won't admit to that.
In French, that's gauche.
Yeah. Yes.
Another bakery, Rubitide Bakery on Gold Street.
Yes.
Okay.
In Gold and Gray Avenue.
Okay, I didn't know about that one.
There was also
I didn't go down Gold Street. Did you say Gold or Gray?
The corner of Gold and Gray.
Corner Gold and Gray. Okay, because I never went down that area too much. I had an uncle, my uncle Ovid Halley, lived on Gray Street. So that's the only time I ever went on Gray Street was if we would go visit them on a Sunday. And sometimes my mother and father didn't want to be bothered with us 4 boys, so they just left us home. And an interesting story about my uncle, Ovid. He was a brother to my grandfather. As Dave can attest to. Dave can attest. The Halleys have a long bloodline. They live to be ripe old ages. And one of the stories I always tell about my Uncle Oscar was that he lived to be 102 years old. And he died when he got hit by a car crossing Silver Street after attending Mass at the Blessed Sacrament. So how much longer he could have lived, we don't know. But he was 102. I'm not sure, because you guys live on Gray.
We live on Gray now.
Yeah.
We bought the Baldwin home.
Yeah.
The 2 doors up from me is, well, not Hallie, but Oscar's wife's parents.
Oscar. No, did I say Ovid? Yeah, it was Oscar. I'm sorry, Oscar. Yeah. I had another uncle, Ovid, who was a dentist. That's what I was thinking of. I hated him.
It was, yes, and he was overseer of the poor.
I don't know. Any other questions?
Where was all your banking done? Uptown?
Back, I was going to say, back then when I had my paper route, my banking was in my back pocket. I don't know. I don't know where my dad had his banking done. I don't remember a bank in the South End.
No, the credit union.
Not where I put it there.
Well, they started having credit unions.
How common was it for some of the small stores to have an awning that would have been over the sidewalk?
Most of them did. Ones that I can recall, most of them did. So I guess you're going to see me back here someday because she wants me to do the same thing about Main Street back in those days. So we'll be taking a walk with the how did Reverend Whittemore refer to it? The French warriors. And go and venture uptown. We used to go to Waterville Hardware to buy our hockey stakes. Thank you.